It's February 5th, 2026. Let's go back 2 years, to 1:28 in the morning. That was the moment Baltimore didn't just lose a bridge, it lost a landmark, a piece of its identity. For nearly half a century, the Francis Scott Key Bridge was the gateway to the city. And then, just like that, in under 30 seconds, it was gone. We've all seen that shocking footage. But now the story isn't about the twisted steel in the river anymore. It's moved to the courtroom. And the financial storm? Well, it's just getting started. Take a look at this number. Let it sink in. $5.2 billion. That's the mind-boggling estimate to build a new bridge. A bridge that's tougher, smarter, and designed so that this kind of tragedy can never happen again. But it also raises the multi-billion-dollar question. Who's going to foot the bill for this?
Now, just a few days ago, it seemed like we got some good news. The U.S. government announced a settlement with the ship's owners for about $102 million. And on the surface, hey, that sounds like a lot of money, right? A win. But here's the reality check. That money barely scratches the surface. It only covers the massive months-long cleanup effort, pulling 50,000 tons of wreckage out of the river. Think of it as just the down payment on this disaster.
And then there's this number, $43.6 million. This is what the owners of the gigantic container ship, the Dali, are claiming is the absolute limit of what they owe. Not just for the cleanup, but for everything. The bridge, the lives that were lost, all the economic chaos. You're probably thinking, how on earth can they argue that? Well, the answer is tangled up in a really old, really controversial law from the 1800s. And that's what's setting the stage for one heck of a legal fight. Okay, so before we dive into that courtroom drama, we have to go back to the ship itself. For more than a year, investigators from the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, swarmed the Dali. They were on a mission, hunting for the cause. They were looking for that needle in the haystack, that one tiny thing that could set off such a massive disaster. And what they eventually found? It was almost too small to be believable. In November of 2025, the NTSB dropped its final report, and it was a bombshell. All those early theories you heard about, a cyber attack, contaminated dirty fuel, all wrong. The real culprit was something mechanical, something almost ridiculously mundane, and yet it was absolutely catastrophic. It was a single loose electrical wire. So how in the world does one wire lead to this? Well, the NTSB laid it all out. They found this tiny plastic label, the kind used to mark wires, was put on wrong. It physically blocked the wire from making a solid, secure connection. And when that connection inevitably wiggled loose, it tripped a high-voltage breaker, throwing the entire ship into a blackout. A second blackout hit soon after, and that was it. The engines died, the steering died, and that 95,000-ton ship became a rudderless missile aimed right at the heart of the bridge. The wording here from the NTSB is so precise, and that's critical. This wasn't a guess. One investigator said finding this wire was like hunting for a loose rivet on the Eiffel Tower, but finding it changed the entire game. Because now, the legal question isn't just what happened, it's why was that wire loose in the first place? Was this just sloppy maintenance, or was it a known defect? The answer to that question is literally worth billions of dollars. And that brings us right to the legal battlefield. You gotta understand there are two separate fights going on. The first one, over the cleanup costs, that just got settled. But the second one, the huge fight over who pays to rebuild the bridge itself, that's about to kick off. And it all comes down to a law that honestly feels like it belongs in a history museum.
This chart just lays the financial craziness bare. You see that sliver for the $102 million settlement? It's tiny. The company's liability claim of $43.6 million even smaller. That giant multi-billion-dollar gap in the middle, that's what's on the line in a trial that's set to start on June 1st. And the shipping company's main weapon is a law from the age of steamships and pirates.
Yeah, to understand their argument, you actually have to go all the way back to 1851. Back then, Congress passed this act to encourage people to invest in shipping, which was a super risky business. You had pirates, you had uncharted waters. So the law said if a disaster happened, but it wasn't the owner's direct fault or knowledge, they wouldn't lose their entire fortune. This is the same law they used after the Titanic sank. And now, here we are in 2026, and it's being used to protect the owners of a modern megaship.
Here's the law itself, and it's shockingly simple. It says a ship owner's liability is limited to the value of their vessel after the accident. So the companies are basically arguing, hey, our broken, damaged ship is only worth $43.6 million now, so that's all we should have to pay. It's an argument that could leave U.S. taxpayers holding the bag for the other $5 billion. But there's a huge catch.
These three words, privity or knowledge, are everything. This is the whole case. Think of it like this. If you let a friend borrow your car and, out of the blue, the brakes fail, you might not be liable. But if you knew the brakes were bad and you didn't say anything, then you're on the hook. That's privity or knowledge. So, if the government's lawyers can prove the owners knew about the Dali's electrical problems, and there were reports of blackouts just hours before it left port, then that 175-year-old liability shield gets smashed to pieces. If they can't prove it, well, the pirate law stands.
You know, while all these billions are being debated by lawyers in fancy suits, it's really easy to lose sight of the profound human toll of this disaster. And it's a story that gets buried under all the headlines about steel, concrete, and money.
For almost 2 full years, 4 of the Dali's senior officers have been trapped in a kind of legal purgatory. They haven't been charged with a single crime, they're not in jail. But they can't go home. Their passports were taken, and they're being held as material witnesses for a trial that just keeps getting pushed back.
A recent report from The Guardian just put their situation into heartbreaking focus. I mean, think about that. 2 years of their lives just gone. Stuck in a foreign country, separated from their families, just waiting. They've become the human face of a global maritime system that too often seems to care more about the cargo than the people moving it.
And we must never, ever forget the 6 men who were on that bridge that night just doing their jobs. They were immigrant workers, out there filling potholes so the rest of us could have a smooth commute. Their families, from 4 different countries, are now part of this huge lawsuit, all trying to find some measure of justice in a system that seems built to value a ship more than a human life.
But here's the thing. Out of this absolute tragedy, an incredible story of resilience has started to emerge. You'd think losing your main bridge would just cripple a port. But Baltimore sent a message to the entire world. You can knock down our bridge, but you can't knock us out.
Get this. In 2025, the year right after the collapse, the Port of Baltimore didn't just recover. It had the single best year in its entire history, a record 1.1 million shipping containers. It was a testament to the incredible grit of its workers and some smart modernizations that were already in the works. It proved, without a doubt, how vital that port is to the whole world.
So what does $5.2 billion buy you? Well, the new bridge is going to be a beast of modern engineering, and this chart kind of shows you why it costs so much. It's not just a replacement, it's a major upgrade. It's going to be taller to let the next generation of megaships pass under it. But the most crucial part is the pure protection. We're talking about massive concrete structures called dolphins, designed to stop a ship like the Dali dead in its tracks. The new bridge will be, for all intents and purposes, Dali-proof.
And this gets to the real heart of the issue. This whole disaster blew wide open. See, this wasn't even the first time a ship hit a bridge in Baltimore. It happened back in 1980. But that ship was tiny compared to the Dali. The Dali was 10 times bigger. The simple truth is that our ships have outgrown our infrastructure. They're 21st century giants navigating a world of 20th century bridges. What happened in Baltimore wasn't just a local tragedy, it was a global warning.
So after all of this, we are right back where we started. On June 1st, that gavel is going to fall, and it's going to kick off a trial that will help define maritime law for a new century. The bill for this disaster is finally due.
And these are the stakes, plain and simple. On one side, you have a massive, multi-billion-dollar global shipping industry hiding behind an ancient law, saying their responsibility ends at $43.6 million. And on the other side, well, that's American taxpayers, who could be forced to pay for a catastrophe that they had absolutely nothing to do with.
Which leaves us with this final, critical question. This trial is about so much more than just money. It's about accountability. It's about whether laws written for a world of wooden ships and pirates are still fit for our complex, high-stakes, globalized world. The true cost of the Baltimore Bridge collapse is still being calculated, not just in dollars, but in this fundamental question of who owns the risk when things go horribly wrong.